Dear learners, welcome back to Global Issues for English Learners, where learning English isn't just about vocabulary and grammar. It's about discovering the world more deeply, one story at a time. Let's begin today with a simple scene. A tired office worker walks into a convenience store at 7 p.m. Dinner? A microwavable meal in a plastic tray, bright packaging promising real cheese and no added sugar. 10 minutes later, she's home, scrolling through her phone, chewing without thinking. It's fast. It's cheap. It fills the stomach. But what if that bite is doing more harm than we realize? Today, almost 70% of the average North American diet consists of ultra-processed food. These aren't just junk food snacks. They include items like flavored yogurts, prepackaged breads, ready-to-eat meals, frozen nuggets, and even many breakfast cereals. Wrapped in convenience and marketed with friendly labels, these foods hide a deeper danger, one that reaches far beyond calories or fat. What if I told you that what we eat today is slowly reshaping not just our health, but our hormones, fertility, even our DNA? Could it be that in choosing speed and convenience, we are trading away something far more precious, our very biological future? This video is not about blaming individuals. It's about asking deeper questions. It's about pulling back the curtain on one of the most powerful industries on the planet. And it's about learning to see with new eyes, the labels we read, the choices we make, and the systems that shape them. If you find meaning in this journey, you can support our work by clicking the thanks button or exploring the join option for exclusive member perks. Every small gesture helps us keep creating content that matters, for learners like you, and for the world we share. Something is happening inside our food systems. And it's time we found out what. At first glance, the food in your fridge or on a supermarket shelf might seem harmless, even ordinary. But behind many of these products lies a massive, complex, and sometimes invisible system, the industrial food industry. Industrial food refers to the large-scale, highly mechanized process of growing, processing, packaging, and distributing food. It's built on the idea of efficiency, producing the maximum amount of food, at the lowest cost, for the largest number of people. On paper, this sounds like a victory. More food. Fewer people going hungry. Greater convenience. But reality is more complicated. The problem isn't food itself. It's how that food is made, altered, and delivered to our plates. To keep food on shelves for longer periods, many manufacturers rely on chemical preservatives. To improve flavor in cheap ingredients, they use additives and artificial enhancers. To lower costs, they replace real ingredients with processed alternatives, like hydrogenated oils instead of butter, or high-fructose corn syrup instead of sugar. This results in what scientists call ultra-processed food, products that go through multiple industrial steps and include additives not commonly found in a home kitchen. And here's the scary part, ultra-processed foods are now a staple in the daily diet of billions. According to studies from the United States and Europe, these foods make up more than half of total energy intake for most people. In Brazil, Canada, and the UK, that number is rising too. The situation is no longer just a personal health concern, it's a public health crisis. Research has linked ultra-processed foods to rising rates of obesity, diabetes, heart disease, and even some types of cancer. But there's more. New studies are now connecting industrial food to hormonal imbalances, reproductive issues, and even neurological effects in children. It's no longer just about the waistline, it's about the way our bodies are being slowly reprogrammed. And yet, Food companies spend billions each year on advertising, promoting these products as fun, modern, and safe. Bright colors, clever slogans, and even health claims are used to distract us from what's really inside. They target children, teenagers, and working families who often don't have the time or resources to question what they're eating. So who benefits from this system? Who controls it? And what forces keep it in motion? Before we can answer those questions, we need to understand how we got here in the first place. Because the story of industrial food isn't just about modern technology, it's about history, war, power, and changing lifestyles. And some of the choices made decades ago still shape our daily meals today. Sometimes, to see clearly, we must first look back. To understand how industrial food took over our diets, we need to go back to war, to scarcity, and to an age when food was not yet a global business. In the early 20th century, much of the world's food was still grown locally. People ate what was available in season, and many meals were cooked from scratch. But 2 world wars and a Great Depression changed everything. Governments, especially in the United States, invested heavily in industrial agriculture to feed troops, civilians, and recovering economies. New technologies, like synthetic fertilizers and pesticides, allowed farms to grow more crops faster than ever before. Canning, refrigeration, and vacuum packing meant that food could now travel further and last longer. These innovations were, in many ways, life-saving. But they also laid the foundation for a new system, one that prioritized quantity over quality. After World War II, the machines and chemicals used for warfare were repurposed for agriculture. Nitrogen, once used in explosives, became the key ingredient in fertilizers. Factories that produced tanks and weapons were now manufacturing tractors and food processing equipment. Corporations saw an opportunity. If they could produce food like cars, fast, cheap, and identical, they could dominate the market. So they did. The 1950s brought frozen dinners, instant soups, and powdered desserts into the homes of millions. These products were advertised as symbols of progress, clean, scientific, and modern. Housewives were told they could save time, children were told they could eat like superheroes. And so began the rise of what we now call convenience food. At first, it felt revolutionary. But over time, the cracks began to show. As demand for processed food increased, farmers were pushed to grow massive amounts of a few select crops, mainly corn, wheat, and soy. These crops could be turned into dozens of industrial ingredients: corn syrup, soy protein, starches, oils, emulsifiers. And because they were cheap and subsidized by governments, they flooded the market. Real food, fresh fruits, vegetables, whole grains, became relatively more expensive and less accessible. This new agricultural model became known as monoculture, growing a single crop over a large area, year after year. It maximized yield but damaged soil, reduced biodiversity, and made farms dependent on chemical inputs. Over time, small farmers were squeezed out by large agribusinesses, and the food system became more centralized, more industrialized, and less transparent. By the 1980s and 1990s, globalization spread this model around the world. Trade agreements allowed multinational food companies to expand into Asia, Africa, and Latin America. American-style supermarkets opened in countries where local markets had once thrived. Traditional diets were slowly replaced by processed alternatives. And as profits grew, so did health problems. Obesity, once considered a disease of the wealthy, began rising sharply in poorer communities. So did cases of heart disease and diabetes. In the U.S., for example, type 2 diabetes used to be rare in children. Now it's a growing epidemic, especially among children from low-income families who rely on cheap, processed food to get by. The shift wasn't just physical. It was cultural. Home cooking declined. Meals became shorter, less social, more rushed. And food, once a celebration of tradition and nourishment, became a product, sold by corporations more interested in shareholder profits than human health. We didn't arrive here by accident. The industrial food system was carefully designed, shaped by wars, politics, corporate strategy, and cultural change. And once it took root, it became incredibly hard to escape. But as with all systems, it can be challenged. If we know where it came from, we might begin to see where it could go next. Something was building, hidden behind the bright colors and plastic packaging. It wasn't just about how food was made, it was about what that food was beginning to do to us. Walk into any supermarket today, from Toronto to Tokyo to Wellington, and take a slow look around. At first glance, it appears to be a paradise of choice, aisles filled with thousands of options, from sparkling beverages to ready-to-eat snacks, instant noodles, sauces, cookies, and frozen meals. But beneath this illusion of abundance lies a deeper truth. Most of it comes from just a few corporations, and much of it falls under one category, ultra-processed food. The numbers are staggering. In Canada, nearly 48% of all calories consumed come from ultra-processed products. In the United States, that number exceeds 60%. In Japan, a country known for its traditional food culture, ultra-processed foods are rising quickly among the younger generations. These aren't occasional treats, they've become daily meals. And with them comes a growing health crisis. In 2023, a study published in the British Medical Journal reviewed the diets of more than 200,000 people across multiple countries. It found a direct link between high consumption of ultra-processed foods and a greater risk of cancer, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and early death. Another study conducted by Harvard researchers showed that each 10% increase in ultra-processed food in a person's diet was associated with a 12% increased risk of cardiovascular disease. The damage isn't just long-term, it's immediate. These foods are designed to be hyperpalatable, engineered to keep us eating more. They often contain the triple threat, sugar, salt, and fat, carefully combined to trigger pleasure responses in the brain. This hijacks our natural hunger signals, making us crave more even when we're not truly hungry. But it doesn't stop at weight gain or high blood pressure. Scientists are uncovering more disturbing connections. Some food preservatives and packaging chemicals, like phthalates and bisphenol A, BPA, have been found to interfere with hormone function. These chemicals are now being studied for their potential role in fertility decline, early puberty in children, and even changes in brain development. One shocking report from 2022 revealed that sperm counts across Western countries have dropped by more than 50% over the past 50 years. While there are many contributing factors, researchers are increasingly looking at food-related chemicals as part of the cause. In one interview, a pediatric endocrinologist asked quietly, "Are we designing a future where having children becomes more difficult for everyone?" Even more unsettling is the impact on children. Ultra-processed foods are aggressively marketed to kids, bright packaging, cartoon characters, and flavors like cotton candy or birthday cake. A study from New Zealand found that children between the ages of 4 and 13 consumed up to 60% of their daily calories from these products. Many of these foods not only lack essential nutrients but also contain dyes and emulsifiers that have been linked to behavioral issues, including ADHD symptoms and reduced attention span. So why are these products still everywhere? Because they are profitable. The 5 largest food companies in the world made more than $300 billion in revenue last year. Their business model relies on shelf-stable, low-cost products that can be produced in massive quantities and sold to every corner of the globe. These companies fund scientific studies, lobby governments, and use powerful marketing to maintain control. In 2024, investigative journalists revealed internal emails from one major snack brand. The documents showed executives discussing how to target time-starved mothers and bored teens on social media. One line stood out: "We're not selling food, we're selling moments, dopamine hits, and lifestyle fantasies." So where does that leave the rest of us? In a world where food has become a battlefield, between convenience and health, affordability and safety, freedom and manipulation. The consequences are deeply personal, yet profoundly global. And in the middle of it all, a quiet question rises. If our food is making us sick, why do we keep eating it? Maybe the answer lies not just in our kitchens, but in the systems, interests, and contradictions woven into every bite we take. At first glance, it may seem like an easy choice: just stop eating ultra-processed food. Read the labels. Cook more meals at home. Shop at farmers' markets. But in reality, this issue is far more complicated than personal responsibility or willpower. Let's begin with economics. Industrial food is cheap because it's designed to be. Government subsidies in countries like the United States and Canada support massive production of corn, wheat, and soy. These crops become the base for thousands of processed ingredients, from corn syrup to soy lecithin. Because they're so abundant and inexpensive, they end up in everything, from breakfast bars to salad dressings. Meanwhile, fresh produce, which is harder to store and transport, is often more expensive and less available in low-income neighborhoods. This isn't a coincidence. It's a market shaped by powerful forces and financial incentives. Then comes the issue of access. For millions of families, especially those in rural areas or urban food deserts, processed food is the only affordable and available option. In some communities, the nearest supermarket might be miles away, while the nearest convenience store is just around the corner. A frozen pizza that costs $3 and feeds a family becomes more practical than a bag of fresh spinach and salmon. Can we really blame the parents? Or is the system failing them? There's also the cultural and psychological angle. Many of us were raised on processed food. It's what we ate at birthday parties, what we packed for school lunch, what we turned to during long work days. Over time, certain brands become symbols of comfort, nostalgia, or success. Advertisements play directly into this emotional memory. A bowl of cereal isn't just food, it's childhood. A soda isn't just a drink, it's freedom, fun, identity. These feelings are powerful, and food companies know how to use them. Marketing is perhaps the most invisible layer of control. Studies show that children recognize processed food logos even before they can read. Billions are spent every year on advertising campaigns, influencer partnerships, and colorful packaging designed to manipulate not just our tastes, but our trust. And behind the scenes, there's the legal and political machinery. Food corporations hire lobbyists to influence laws and block regulations. In 2023, one major bill in the European Union aimed to place warning labels on highly processed foods, similar to those used on cigarettes. The proposal was shut down after intense pressure from the food industry, who feared damage to brand reputation. In the United States, food safety regulations are riddled with loopholes. Many additives banned in countries like Japan or New Zealand are still allowed in American foods. Even the science is complicated. Not because it's unclear, but because it's constantly challenged. Independent studies often face attacks from corporate-funded research groups that try to create doubt. More research is needed, they say. Or, the evidence is inconclusive. This tactic, known as manufacturing doubt, has been used before by tobacco companies, oil giants, and now, food manufacturers. And then there's time. Industrial food is fast. It saves minutes, hours, even days. In a world where people are overworked, underpaid, and exhausted, speed is power. Cooking fresh meals 3 times a day sounds ideal, but for single parents, night shift workers, or students juggling multiple jobs, it's not always realistic. The system rewards quick fixes, even when they come at a long-term cost. So what do we do? This complexity isn't an excuse for inaction. It's a call for deeper understanding. Blaming individuals for eating what the system offers is like blaming passengers for a ship's direction while the captain steers toward the iceberg. It ignores the layers of inequality, manipulation, and structural pressure that guide our decisions. The danger of industrial food isn't just in what it contains, it's in the illusion that it's the only way. That health is a luxury. That real food is for the privileged. That taste should be designed in a lab, not grown from the ground. And as we peel back these layers, a deeper realization begins to take shape. What we put into our bodies is shaped by forces far beyond the grocery store, and those forces are rewriting not only our health, but our future. Because while industrial food travels across borders with ease, so do its consequences. If we think of the industrial food system as a machine, its gears don't stop at national borders. In fact, many of the foods people eat every day in New Zealand, Japan, or Canada are part of a complex global chain, one that links fields, factories, shipping ports, boardrooms, and kitchen tables across continents. Let's take a simple chocolate bar. The sugar might come from Brazil, harvested by low-wage workers under intense heat. The cocoa beans from Côte d'Ivoire, where children as young as 12 have been found working on plantations. The milk powder? Perhaps from New Zealand's dairy industry. The bar itself is likely manufactured in a factory somewhere in Asia. Then it's packaged in plastic, maybe made from fossil fuels extracted in the Middle East. All this for a snack that sells for $1.50. This system feeds the world. But it also exploits it. In many developing countries, traditional farming systems have been displaced by monoculture exports, growing cash crops like palm oil or soy instead of local food. This makes countries more dependent on imports, more vulnerable to price changes, and less able to feed their own people. When global food prices rise, as they did during the 2022 to 2023 supply chain crisis, it's the poorest nations that suffer most. In the Pacific Islands, for example, rising obesity and diabetes rates are linked directly to imported processed foods. Local agriculture has declined, and many communities now rely on canned meats, instant noodles, and sugary beverages instead of traditional root crops or fresh seafood. It's cheaper. It's accessible. But the cost is health and culture. This isn't just a health crisis. It's a cultural erosion. Food traditions are vanishing. Young generations grow up not knowing how to cook, not recognizing the crops their ancestors planted. Instead, they grow up watching ads for fast food chains, believing that a boxed meal is more modern, more valuable than a home-cooked dish. And when climate change enters the picture, the stakes rise even further. Industrial agriculture contributes heavily to greenhouse gas emissions through livestock production, chemical fertilizers, deforestation, and transportation. Meanwhile, extreme weather events are making it harder to grow crops, disrupting food supplies, and threatening food security for millions. So while the developed world debates nutrition labels and organic certifications, much of the rest of the world faces a different question: how can we survive in a system that profits from our vulnerability? The ripple effects of industrial food don't end with any one country. They stretch across oceans, into classrooms, hospitals, forests, and rivers. And they ask us, quietly but urgently, to think beyond our own plates. Because the next time we bite into a snack, we may be tasting more than just flavor. We may be tasting the world itself, its labor, its suffering, and its silence. The road ahead isn't set in stone. Like every system shaped by human hands, the future of food can still change. But which direction we go, toward recovery or deeper crisis, depends on the choices we make now, both as individuals and as societies. Let's start with the darker path. If current trends continue unchecked, experts warn of a rising metabolic pandemic. That's not a virus, but a global explosion of chronic diseases linked to diet, obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart failure, autoimmune disorders, fertility decline. Health systems, already strained by aging populations and mental health challenges, may not be able to cope with the rising cost of care. More children will grow up battling illnesses once seen only in the elderly. Meanwhile, antibiotic resistance could worsen. In industrial meat production, animals are often fed antibiotics, not to treat illness, but to promote growth and prevent disease in overcrowded conditions. This practice creates superbugs, bacteria that no longer respond to medicine. According to the World Health Organization, antibiotic resistance could become one of the top causes of death globally by 2050. Climate change would accelerate the damage. Monoculture farming strips the soil of nutrients and relies on fossil fuel-based fertilizers. As droughts, floods, and extreme temperatures increase, food security could collapse in entire regions. And the poorest would suffer first. But there is another path, one filled with effort, imagination, and hope. In cities around the world, movements are growing: regenerative agriculture, community-supported farms, school gardens, rooftop greenhouses. These aren't just trends, they're signs of a cultural shift. More people are asking hard questions. Where does my food come from? Who made it? What's really inside it? New technologies also offer promise. Scientists are exploring lab-grown meat, plant-based proteins, and precision fermentation to reduce the environmental cost of traditional farming. Apps that connect local farmers to consumers are gaining traction. Some cities are even creating food forests on public land, free spaces where anyone can pick fruits, vegetables, and herbs. Education will be key. When people learn to cook again, to read labels critically, to demand better policy and transparency, change becomes possible. In Canada, for instance, several school programs now teach children how to grow food, understand nutrition, and cook basic meals, life skills once lost in the rush of modern life. Still, no future is guaranteed. The question is, which direction are we choosing? Will we continue to let corporations shape our plates and our health? Or will we reclaim food, not just as fuel, but as culture, connection, and care? The path ahead is uncertain. But perhaps uncertainty is a gift. It reminds us that the future is not something we inherit, it's something we build. Dear learners, we've journeyed through history, science, economics, and culture, all through the lens of something as everyday, as intimate, as the food on our plates. What we've discovered is both unsettling and empowering. Industrial food has quietly reshaped our bodies, our environments, and our values. Behind its bright packaging lies a system built on convenience, cost-cutting, and control. A system that's good at feeding us quickly, but not necessarily nourishing us. And not without consequence. But awareness changes everything. Once we understand the forces at play, we begin to see our food differently. We start to ask better questions. We begin to notice what we once ignored, the long list of ingredients we can't pronounce, the fresh produce hidden in the back of the store, the subtle pull of advertisements promising happiness through sugar and salt. We also begin to notice our own power. Choosing whole foods more often. Supporting local farmers and producers when possible. Cooking simple meals, even just once a week, with real ingredients. Sharing knowledge so that others, too, can see what's beneath the surface. And perhaps most importantly, speaking up. Whether it's voting for policies that support food education and transparency, or simply having a conversation with a friend, change doesn't require perfection, it requires momentum. Here's a question to carry with you. What kind of world are we building, when even our meals are shaped by systems that put profit before people? In asking that, we reconnect with something essential. Because food is not just about survival. It's about love, memory, belonging, and care. It deserves our attention. And so do the people affected by it, from farmers and factory workers to children growing up with food as a silent threat. This video was not meant to make you afraid, it was meant to make you aware. And awareness is the beginning of wisdom. If you found this content meaningful, please consider supporting our channel by liking, sharing, or leaving a comment. Your voice helps amplify stories that matter. And if you'd like to go further, tap the join button to unlock exclusive content and help us keep producing thoughtful, learner-friendly videos for curious minds like yours. Thank you for being part of this journey, where learning English meets learning the world. Until next time, take care of your words, your questions, and your meals.